Okay, hello everyone. This is Sharonda, and this is my podcast as well as my YouTube channel, Spiritual Sense. Uh, today is Wednesday, which is January the 4th. Okay, so this is my first day. Because I think this is like the third recording that I've done for today. So this is my first day of the year doing a recording in regards to, um, a variety of topics. So I'd like to start off by saying that this podcast as well as this YouTube channel is for entertainment purposes. I also like to stress that it's not a biblical nor a religious podcast. It is for entertainment purposes. That means if it just so happens to coincide with your life, that maybe by chance or even by happenstance, I don't go snooping, probing, and prying into anyone's personal affairs and then presenting it on this podcast, okay? So we're going to proceed with the topic for today, which is on Lucifer. Lucifer. We all have heard the name or the title or the analogy of Lucifer. I think we all have heard of devil, Satan, Lucifer, whatever the case may be. So what exactly is Lucifer? In terms of biblically, you may have seen that name in the Bible a few times. It says it's one of various figures in folklore associated with the planet Venus. The entity's name was subsequently absorbed into Christianity as the name of the quote-unquote devil. Modern scholarship generally translate the term in the relevant Bible passage, Isaiah 14:12, where the Greek Septuagint reads, and I'm not able to read in Greek, but I'm going to tell you it mentions it as a morning star or shining one rather than a proper noun. Lucifer, as found in Latin Vulgate. As for the name of devil in Christian theology, the more common meaning in English, Lucifer, is rendering of the Hebrew word Haleli in Isaiah, given in the King James Version of the Bible. The translator of this version took the word from the Latin Vulgate and translated it by the Latin word Lucifer, meaning the morning star, the planet Venus, or an adjective light bringing. So, in Roman folklore, Lucifer, light bringer, was the name of the planet Venus, though it was often personified as a male figure bearing a torch. The Greek name for this planet was variously Phosphorus, light bringer, or Heliophosphorus, meaning dawn bringer. Lucifer was said to be the fabled son of Aurora and Sibelius and father of Ceyx. He was often presented in poetry as heralding the dawn. The Latin word corresponding to Greek phosphoros is Lucifer. It is used in its an astronomical sense both in prose and poetry. Poets sometimes personify the star, placing it in a mythological context. Lucifer's mother, Aurora, is connate to the Vedic goddess Ushas, Lutherian goddess Asirene, and Greek Eos, all three of whom are also goddesses of the dawn. All four are considered derivatives of the Proto-Indo-European stem, dawn, a stem that also gave right to Proto-Germanic. So it just goes on and on and on, but it goes on to mention that the fourth star is that of Venus, Luciferus by name. Some say it is Juno's. In many tales, it is recorded that it called Hesperus too. It seems to be the largest of all stars. Some have said it represents the son of Aurora and Cephalus, who surpassed many in beauty, so that he even vied or vied with Venus, and as Eratosthenes says, for this reason it is called the star Venus. It is visible both at dawn and sunset, and so popularly has been called both Luciferus and Hesperus. So I'm going to get more or less into what the Bible mentions about Lucifer, because I do feel as though, although when we begin to speak on things that are folklore, mythological, astronomical, a lot of people begin to lose interest. But there is a message that is being conveyed even in the midst of it all. Okay? And so bear with me just a moment. I just need to check on something. It is something that is being conveyed even in the midst of. So, all right. So, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, the king of Babylon is condemned in a prophetic vision by the prophet Isaiah, and it's called the Shining One, Son of the Morning. The title, Hila bin Shahar, refers to the planet Venus as the morning star, and that is how the Hebrew word is usually interpreted. The Hebrew word transliterated as Hele and Helil occurs only once in the Hebrew Bible. The Septuagint renders in Greek as Hieropharos, bringer of the dawn. Okay, so this basically goes on and on and on, basically back to what I just mentioned, but it says according to the King James Bible based Strong's Concordance, the original Hebrew word means shining one, light bearer. Okay, so a lot of this it just goes on and on and on, and it's not giving me exactly what it means. It says devil. I think this is more or less what I'm getting at now. The metaphor of the morning star that Isaiah 14:12 applied to a king of Babylon gave rise to the general use of the Latin word for morning star, capitalized as the original name of the devil before his fall from grace, linking Isaiah 14:12 with Luke 10. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, and interpreting the passage in Isaiah as an allegory of Satan's fall from heaven, considering pride as a major sin peaking in self-deification. Lucifer became the template for the devil. As a result, Lucifer was identified with the devil in Christianity and in Christian popular literature, as in Dante Alighieri's Inferno, Jules Van den Vondel's Lucifer, and John Milton's Paradise Lost. Early medieval Christianity fairly distinguished between Lucifer and Satan. While Lucifer, as the devil, is fixated in hell, Satan executes the desires of Lucifer as his vassals. So that makes a whole lot of sense. That they put it all in a nutshell. But it goes on and on and on, and I'm going to read briefly through what it has here. It says Aquila of Sinope derives the word Hillel, the Hebrew name for the morning star, from the verb yalal, to lament. This derivation was adopted as a proper name for an angel who laments the loss of his former beauty. The Christian Church Fathers, for example, Hieronymus in his Vulgate translated this as Lucifer. The equation of Lucifer and the fallen angel probably occurred in 1st century Palestinian Judaism. The church fathers brought the fallen light bringer Lucifer into connection with the devil on the basis of the saying of Jesus in the Gospel of Luke. I saw Satan fall from the heaven like lightning. So as I mentioned before, it's kind of like, I have an aunt that always mentions about throwing a rock hiding in the hand, or living vicariously, or as I mentioned when I mentioned about an evil eye, how a person can have a spiritual attachment where an evil eye, that they may possess the spirit of an evil eye, and that lets you know when something on the outside may be presented to you. Like some people can pick up on negative energies that may not necessarily be from their own being, but from somewhere else. And in a sense, this is what I gather from this in terms of a Lucifer, in terms of a devil, as we would say. Some Christian writers have applied the name Lucifer as used in the book of Isaiah, and the motive of a heavenly being cast down to the earth, to the devil. Sig V.K. Tungstag argues that the New Testament war in heaven theme of Revelation 12, in which the dragon, who is called the devil and Satan, was thrown down to the heaven, was derived from the passage about the Babylonian king in Isaiah 14. Origen interpreted such Old Testament passages as being about manifestations of the devil. Origen was not the first to interpret the Isaiah 14 passage as referring to the devil. He was preceded by at least Tertullian, who is in his Adversus Martianum. I'm not pronouncing that right. Christ presents as spoken by the devil the words of Isaiah 14:14. I will ascend upon the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Though Tertullian was a speaker of the language in which the word Lucifer was created, Lucifer is not among the numerous names and phrases he used to describe the devil. Even at the time of the Latin writer Augustine of Hippo, a contemporary of the composition of the Vulgate, Lucifer had not yet become a common name for the devil. So basically, this is foretelling, is what that is. This is fortune teller. So as I mentioned, when I did my podcast on the analysis of the Genesis analysis, I said oftentimes contraction in terms of name, when you begin to take note of words and names and things of the sort, this is spirit speaking and telling on a sensibility. So whoever may have the name of Lucifer or Fur or Lu or C or whatever in some type of sensibility within a name would give you an inclination as to what is being conveyed, like who's able to see and what the purpose of that is for. Okay? So that's why you don't have a lot of those, as I mentioned, that name was not coined at the time when they spoke it. Exactly, because they were speaking into existence. They were speaking prophecy into existence. Okay? Augustine of Hippo's work, Civitas Dei, 5th century, became the major opinion of Western demonology, including the Catholic Church. For Augustine, the rebellion of the devil was the first and final cause of evil. By this, he rejected some earlier teachings about Satan having fallen when the world was already created. So, in other words, I mean, you will see it before it manifests itself. In other words, you're speaking into the future, as I mentioned before, in the present since the past as well as the future. Just pay attention. Further, Augustine rejects the idea that envy could have been the first sin, as some early Christians believe, evident from sources like Cave of Treasures, in which Satan has fallen because he envies humans and refuses to prostrate himself before Adam. Since pride, loving yourself more than others, and God is required to be envious, hatred for the happiness of others. In the storyline in which it mentions about, Cain killing Abel, I mentioned that this is the first sin that was presented by book. Jealousy. Envy, we all will feel envy about something, but when it gets to the point when you create an act such as killing, that's not envy no longer. That is demonic. It's jealousy that has been turned up, that has become irrational is what it is. He argues that evil came first into existence by the free will of Lucifer. Lucifer's attempt to take God's throne is not an assault on the gates of heaven, but a turn to solipsism, in which the devil becomes God in his world. When the king of Babel uttered his praise in Isaiah, he was speaking through the spirit of Lucifer, the heads of devils. He concluded that everyone who falls away from God are within the body of Lucifer and is a devil. Adherents of the King James only movement and others who hold that Isaiah 14:12 does indeed refer to the devil have decried the modern translations. An opposing view attributes to Origen the first identification of the Lucifer of Isaiah 14:12 with the devil, and the Tertullian and Augustine of Hippo the spread of the story of Lucifer as fallen through pride, envy of God, and jealousy of humans. And I do believe that. I do. Adherents of King James only movement and others who told, I'm reading the same thing over. Protestant theologian John Calvin rejected the identification of Lucifer with Satan or the devil. He said the exposition of this passage, which some have given as if it referred to Satan, has arisen from ignorance, for the context plainly shows these statements must be understood in reference to the king of the Babylonians. Martin Luther also considered it a gross error to refer this verse to the devil. Counter-Reformation or Reformation writers like Albertinus of Brescia classified the 7 deadly sins each to a specific biblical demon. Now, I mentioned that myself. He, as well as Peter Bensfield, assigned Lucifer to the sin pride. I mentioned this myself. It will be done in such a manner. That's how we as people operate in terms of, like when I chose my son's name, it was, I decided, okay, let me go online and let me look for a name for my son or what have you. I knew I wanted it to be a D name, but I was open to other, alphabets as well, but I was fixated on a D name. So, in my, looking up to find what name would work best, that I would like for him, I came across the name that he has now. Because I just so happened to like that name. I thought it was a so-called girl name, but to me it seemed more masculine, like a masculine name, and I decided to go with that name. Okay, now before I go into the Latter-day Saint movement in regards to Lucifer, and I'm going to conclude this, okay? But for those who want to reference back to my YouTube episode, as well as I don't think I did a podcast. I could have done a podcast. I don't think I did a podcast. I think I just did a YouTube presentation, the Genesis analysis of what have you. And I also mentioned this in another episode, and I can't think of it right away, when I mentioned that a lot of like you would begin to tell on yourself without even thinking about it. That's how the spirit is set up. Some things are just the way they are. God will put the spirit in you, and it just you're gonna work and suit to what He deemed it to be. And I would say that in the naming of my daughter as well. So I had fixated that I was gonna name her one thing, and then one day I'm sitting there and I'm kind of laid down while I was pregnant with her, and I was watching this program, and in turn watching this program, the name just stood out, and I rose up, like I literally turned and rose up to the TV, because at the time the TV was on, I was listening, but I wasn't like watching, and I was fixated on that name. Something had me fixated on that name. I stuck to that name, and that's what the name I was. Now I did manage to change what I was going to name her in terms of her middle name, but in terms of her first name, it stuck. I went with that, and it stuck with me. And I think when you begin to take note of synchronicity, and as I mentioned, you know, in terms of time, when I mentioned about the present, in the present, you will see the past as well as the future. And that's what all being a prophet is begin something will just channel through you, and then it will manifest. It's kind of like throwing a boomerang or throwing a ball and then running and then grabbing the ball. Like you would throw it, it's like throwing it it's like throwing something in the future, and then you'll catch it once you get to a certain period of time. So that's basically how the biblical text operates as well. Like they're speaking in the future by way of the present. And if you take note of the past, he's giving you the synopsis as to what will bring that spirit in. It's being done without you even thinking about it. So we're going to conclude Latter Day Saint movement. And I clicked off, so bear with me with that. Latter Day Saint movement. Because like I said, this is not a biblical nor religious podcast, but I will bring up some of the information in the text as such, but it's not a biblical or religious podcast. Lucifer is regarded within the Latter-day Saint movement as the premortal name of the devil. Mormon theology teaches that in a heavenly council, Lucifer rebelled against the plan of God the Father and was subsequently cast out. So basically, you would know when something is not in agreement with you. You would know. It will present itself out. You would know. The Doctrine and Covenants reads, and this we saw also and bear record that an angel of God, who was in authority in the presence of God, who rebelled against the only begotten Son, whom the Father loved, and who was in the bosom of the Father, was thrust down from the presence of God and the Son, and was called perdition. For the heavens wept over him. He was Lucifer, a son of the morning, and we beheld, and lo, he is fallen, even a son of the morning. And while we were yet in the spirit, the Lord commanded us that we should write the vision. So you would tell what you see, because some people are not able to see it, they're not able to understand it and grasp it. For we beheld Satan, the old serpent, even the devil, who rebelled against God and sought to take the kingdom of our God and his Christ. Wherefore he maketh war with the saints of God and encompassed them round about. So in other words, those who that were not able to foresee and under, this is what I gather, had spiritual sight. they, those who were able to have spiritual sight, they had to fellowship with them to get that understanding, to trust and believe, to integrate, to provide trust and to gain that insight and trust what is being told. After becoming Satan by his fall, Lucifer goeth up and down to and fro in the heavens, seeking to destroy the souls of men. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints consider Isaiah 14:12 to be referring to both the king of Babylonians and the devil. I gather from that is people who are not, I guess in other words, it's a way of saying slow. Like people who are not proficient, who not sufficient enough to catch on and grasp it, is what I gather from what that is being said. Okay, so you have a lot of people. We all do that when we don't feel like somebody is up to par or up to speed. We all would get some type of impatience with them. That's a natural thing. And so in essence, I think in essence that is what this right here is conveying in terms of quote Lucifer or the devil, so to speak. Okay? So I am going to conclude this episode of Spiritual Sense speaking on the topic of Lucifer. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, or a topic for a future show, you're more than welcome to comment in the comment section below. Until then, you have a safe and wonderful day. Good day.